All right, guys. We just finished the live show, the Young Turks. We normally, of course, go 6 to 8, and then we do post game for the members. And we just finished the post game. We had a blast. It was great. And I was ready for the weekend, but then this giant breaking news story that happened, and I got to share it with you guys. So, first of all, this video is brought to you by you guys. Hit the join button below. And you become a Young Turks member. You help the show tremendously, get the progressive message out, and you get fun things like our post game that we just did, where I told the story of how I burned my backyard down once when I was a kid by starting a fire. Anyway, so that's at the essentials level and higher. If you're on YouTube, if you're anywhere else, tyt.com/join, and also our great sponsors, including Too Strong Coffee, toostrongcoffee.com/tyt. It is gives progressive causes, organic, fair trade, and I cannot get it into focus, the mug at least. All right, anyways, it's also delicious. Check it out, toostrongcoffee.com/tyt. All right, I got to get to the story. If you guys join up in the middle, I'll try to shout out your names like we do in the live videos. All right, so I just said during the live show that I'm not sure Trump's speech is enough to convict him on inciting an insurrection. And I said you would need a little bit more evidence about his actions afterwards. And I gave the example of, well, if he would not send in the National Guard after he knew the rioting had begun and anybody's life was in danger, let alone legislators, let alone his own vice president, then I would convict him, right? Well, now we know parts of that story already. We know that he hesitated in calling the National Guard. If I was the Democrats, I'd really hone in on that as evidence that he knew the rioting was happening and he was in favor of it. But there's other pieces of evidence, and I'd love to know more details about that, and they've not pressed for more details on it. There's also other piece of evidence that he knew that Mike Pence was in imminent danger, didn't do anything about it, and has never apologized to him for Trump's own supporters chanting "Hang Mike Pence" and bring a noose. So now, but the new breaking news story is during the riot, Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republicans in the House, called Trump and had a call with him. But we didn't know what was in that call until now. Apparently, a Republican leaked the call to CNN. So that's super interesting. I'm going to get to that in a second. First, MGM7, thank you for becoming a Young Turks member. We really appreciate it. Again, it's so easy. Just hit the join button below. All right, now let me give you what someone who was privy to Kevin McCarthy's call reported as happening between the House minority leader representing the Republicans in the House and President Trump. The person has to be a Republican because Kevin McCarthy did not share this with any Democrats. By the way, Harrison Triplet, thank you for becoming a Young Turks member. All right, so according to the Republican source, here's how the call went. McCarthy calls Trump and says, rioters are in the building. Our lives are in danger. You have to call them off. First of all, before we even get to the quotes, guys, now what does that tell you about what the Republican leader thinks? That it was definitely Trump's fault. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called Trump. Like now they're doing this insane defense where they're like, oh, Nancy Pelosi, what did she know and when did she know it? If Kevin McCarthy thought that Nancy Pelosi started the riots, he was right next to Nancy Pelosi. He would have gone and talked to Nancy Pelosi. He didn't think that because he knew that Trump started it, so he called Trump. So now what did Trump say back to him? According to this, he says, well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are. McCarthy just told him, our lives are in danger. Trump says, well, I guess they're a little bit more concerned than you are, aren't they? That's it. He definitely knew, and he definitely wanted it and was happy about it. You don't tell somebody who's in your own party and the leader of your party in the House, oh, I guess the rioters who are looking to kill you are more concerned about what I wanted than you were, Kevin. And I guess that was a mistake, wasn't it? So he's just the worst person on earth and now definitively wanted those riots and should definitely be convicted over that. And the fact that the Republicans haven't agreed to that yet, and it doesn't look like they will, shows you what unbelievable cowards they are. Here, I'm going to give you more details. Before I do, Kevin Hinton, thank you for joining. We appreciate it. Tyrone Athorn, thank you for joining in at the Essentials level. You get all the post games And you could upgrade through the join button as well. Thank you, guys. All right, so we continue with the call. McCarthy, according to CNN, insisted that the rioters were Trump supporters and begged Trump to call them off. Begged Trump to call off the rioters. Obviously, he knows it was Trump. And apparently, and people could overhear this, that set off a shouting match between Trump and McCarthy where they were yelling at each other and were furious. And a furious McCarthy, and I'm picking CNN back up here, a furious McCarthy told the president the rioters were breaking into his office through the windows and asked Trump, quote, who the F do you think you are talking? Who the F do you think you're talking to? Well, Kevin, I got news for you. He thought he was talking to an absolute coward, and he was right. Because McCarthy on that day, of course, when his life was in danger, was in an absolute panic and trying to boss Trump around. Who do you think you're talking to? He thought he was talking to an underling who would listen to his every order, no matter what, even if his life was on the line. And again, he was right. Because right after the riots ended, Kevin McCarthy bent a knee. Not only did he turn around and say, oh, sure, yeah, okay, we shouldn't hold Trump responsible, but he went down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss Trump's ass again. Look, guys, you got to understand something. We talked a lot about how Republicans are liars, they're working for their donors, they're corrupt, all those things. They're all overwhelmingly true in terms of Republican politicians. And I got plenty of beefs with the Republican voters themselves. But the most salient point in this regard is they showed you who they were. They're weaklings. They're pathetic little order followers. Now, normally they follow the orders of their corporate donors, but now Trump has cucked them. So being the betas that they are, they're all going, yes, sir. Next time you can go ahead and kill us, sir. We're so sorry, sir. Pathetic, unbelievably pathetic. You're going to vote for those weaklings, those cowards. I can't imagine bigger loser than Kevin McCarthy. Who do you think you're talking to? Yeah, we think we're talking to a loser. That's who we think. Kevin McCarthy, no respect at all. Any Republican who respects him and votes for him, it's just so freaking sad. So now, one Republican did go on the record. Jamie Herrera Beutler is apparently a person who still has some principles or cares about his own life and well-being. So he told CNN, quote, you have to look at what he did during the insurrection to confirm where his mind was at about Trump. He said that line right there demonstrates to me that either he didn't care, which is impeachable, because you cannot allow an attack on your soil, or he wanted it to happen and was okay with it, which makes me so angry. Well, they were all angry that day. That day and a couple of days afterwards, they came and they puffed and they huffed and they beat their chest. And I told you that they would back down, and they did back down. Now all those Republicans have tucked tail, or almost all of them. And they're saying, yes, sir, yes. Now, look, people say, hey, what kind of precedent are we setting if we don't convict Trump? Think about it, guys. If they convict Trump, and it's a simple majority vote to bar him for politics forever. And now I can't imagine a better reason than you tried to subvert democracy. You tried to end democracy. So we're not going to allow you to participate in democracy because you don't believe in it, and you would end it if you ever won another election. But they say, like, for the next Trump, how about if the next Trump is Trump? He could run again. If he runs again and he is not convicted, he'll have learned his lesson, which is start the violence on day one. You can get Republicans to do anything. He was right. He could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and they would definitely let him get away with it. In fact, they're making the argument now saying it is constitutionally impermissible for us to hold the president accountable because he's left office. By that logic, he could have shot someone on Fifth Avenue and they would have let him get away with it. Now, they're wrong about that. That's not how the law works. He definitely can be impeached. He definitely can be convicted. And now there's no question he should be convicted. Kevin McCarthy told them they're into my office. They're going to kill us. And Trump's like, oh, no, I will not stop them. Well, that's an obvious admission, a stark admission that he wanted the riots. He wanted an actual violent coup, against the United States government. Impeach, convict, and bar him from politics. If he were to come back and he won, he would definitely end America. There is no question about it. He just showed you. By the way, the Democrats should call Kevin McCarthy as a witness. And go ahead, lie on the record, because then I'm going to put on other Republicans you told that story to. And when they don't lie on the record, I'm going to convict you for perjury and put you in jail. Or tell the truth. Tell the truth. As you told your Republican colleagues, Trump said, go ahead and deal with the rioters, and they listened to me and you didn't, so you had it coming. All right. Those are the clear implications of the quotes that I read you of what Trump told McCarthy. So anyone who still is a Trump supporter, which is the overwhelming majority of Republican voters, by the way, and almost all the Republican politicians, you've always hated this country. You did not want equality and justice, and you certainly didn't want democracy. What you wanted was inequality, for you to rule over the rest of us. You wanted injustice. But the minute you lose a vote, you think, nah, I don't want democracy. I don't want equality. Let's just kill them. Look, you can say, oh, that's not fair. Those are just a couple of thousand rioters. Oh, only a couple of thousand. But wait a minute. There's polling out now saying about 3/4 of Republicans didn't mind what happened. They still support Trump. Okay, so that's after the fact. Most Republican voters saying, yeah, I prefer violence to democracy. I prefer that we rule over you through violence. That's what we've always done. And democracy was always a sham. And I never believed or loved America. That is what Republican voters and politicians are saying today. If they want to say otherwise, there's a very easy way to say it. Convict Donald Trump. If you don't, you've always hated the idea of America. You've hated this country. That's why right-wingers declared war on America before, and they're basically declaring war on America now. And certainly Trump did. All right, look, despite all of the propaganda you see all over from politicians and, yes, the mainstream media, that tomorrow we'll go back to false equivalency and we'll go back to calling everything even, including with corporate Republicans. In fact, they do it now on the substance, on all the policy issues, minimum wage and otherwise. Despite all of that, we carry on because of you guys. So thank you to all of you guys who participate. Every member is a young Turk, and you bring that progressive message out and unapologetic message out to the whole country. So look, Limp Neck Mike, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. And yes, it would lead to one last, ladies and gentlemen, we got him. But it isn't about getting him, guys. It's about protecting democracy. If they don't convict him, anybody can come in, cause violence on day one. It's almost certainly going to be a Republican and end this whole American experiment. We cannot let them get away with it. And right now, those coward, horrible, despicable Republican senators are on the verge of letting him get away with it. Is there ever going to be any consequences? And when we say that as progressives, we mean political consequences. You should vote out every Republican senator that votes for Trump. They all hate America, and they all hate our democracy. Vote all those bums out. All right. I love you guys. Thank you for making this show possible. Membership does it. Hit the join button below to do that, or go to tyt.com/join. And yes, I'm angry about this story, but have a good weekend. Love you guys.